life goes by very fast, and you take the chance and live it now while you can. Even losing my wife, she was there 1 minute, and my first wife, and gone the next. I just didn't want to go through life because I was married for so long being alone. There's a lot of interaction, and they weren't 40 and 50-year-old women. They were a lot younger, which really surprised me. And also at the same time made me feel very good, which again, I've never been abroad. So it was all new to me. I wrote all this in the book. I mean, it literally was, I literally booked my flight before I had my passport.
So this is Dan of Vagabond Awake, and today we have John for the interview. Welcome to the channel, John.
Thanks, Dan. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you too. So John, why don't you tell everyone how we met the first time in person?
We met in the mountains of Baguio. It was during an earthquake.
Yeah.
It was probably my second experience of an earthquake, and we just happened to be staying in the same building.
Yeah.
Ironically, I used to watch you prior to going to the Philippines. So it was funny that when we went downstairs during all the chaos, I was so chaotic that I told my wife I was going to run out of the building without her because I felt it sway the first time. When it swayed the second time, I just told her, grab the money, grab the bag, let's go. So I grabbed our baby and we went downstairs, and sure enough, you were on the street, and you and I started talking, and that's how we first met.
Yeah, that was a pretty good earthquake. If you've only had one or two, that's pretty strong.
Yeah.
I grew up in earthquake country, so I can tell you that was probably in the top 5 that I've experienced. So.
Yeah, I thought to myself, what's the matter with this guy? He's not feeling the same thing I am. I was a little nervous, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, it's after a while, it's just part of life. It doesn't bother you much anymore. So, John, you wrote a book that we'll get to in a minute that I want to talk about with you, but you wrote that book partly because of some changes in your life. You sort of had a first life, and now you're living a second life. Tell us about how did that start, or how'd that go?
Well, my first life was basically, I was married for 30 years, and my wife wound up passing away of cancer. So, I went through the whole gamut of raising kids. I was, by the time she passed away, I was close to retiring. But that was a brutal thing to go through. And I actually wrote a book about that experience too. But yeah, after being married that long, you really don't know how to venture going forward into life, right? It almost becomes paralyzing for anybody that's been through that, whether somebody doesn't have to pass away or not. But when you lose somebody or a partner for that long, you're almost lost in a lot of senses. And that's how I was. I was kind of lost at first. Then I found myself trying to stay busy, and I started looking into dating, probably much too soon, but it was more so to keep my mind active and do things other than staying in my house and dwelling on it. I mean, I went to a grief share class and all that kind of stuff, but that's what set me going in a different direction. But how I wound up going to the Philippines was I had a buddy of mine that was retired in the military. So he was kind of my confidant, him and another gentleman, and I would talk to him about who I was dating, so on and so forth, show them pictures. And after a while, when I was dating locally here, again, nothing against American women, but it's a totally different circumstance than dating abroad. The cultures, for one, and two, is that the age differences, and most often than not here, people that I was dating they had still involvement with their exes, still involvement with their kids, where I wasn't in that situation. So that made it a little difficult. But my friend Daniel actually told me that he goes, after me going back and forth and conversing with him, he said, you ought to think about dating some women in the Philippines. My first reaction to that was like, oh, I'm not gonna marry some child bride. I'm not gonna, go down that route. But the more he spoke to me about it, the more it piqued my interest. So to make a long story short, that's how I ventured into dating abroad. And I chose a site which was Christian Filipina. And I did that based on my own background, and somehow I rationalized it thinking that the women on that site were going to be a little bit more wholesome than a women on some of the other sites, if that makes sense.
And so while you were sitting in America, you put a profile up on a dating site in the Philippines?
Oh,
Christian.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, I did. I went through the whole gamut of putting myself out there, taking pictures. And again, that's a lot when you're in your 50s. I had a buddy of mine, and he basically pointed that out. So you got to see what your marketability is. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, marketability? What is that? But he was right in a lot of aspects, because one of the things is when you're married that long, and people that have been married or in a long relationship can relate, is that you become complacent. I was married for 30 years, so I had the whole attitude is like, oh, it's okay, but when you start a new life, now all of a sudden you got to think about your appearance, how you look, how you present yourself to others. So yeah, off I went. I took a selfie, I made a profile, and I did the same thing here in the States, but it was a lot different there in the Philippines because um, the site really geared you to really matching up with somebody as opposed to a bunch of winks and coffee, let's say. So it was a lot more informative in terms of how to meet women. After you go through those steps of setting everything up, the outcome of it became a little surreal for me. It was I had a lot of winks and dates here in the States, but when I got on the Philippine side, it was it was a lot different. There's a lot of interaction, and they weren't 40 and 50-year-old women. They were a lot younger, which really surprised me, and also at the same time made me feel very good.
If you like my free ebook about how I fired my boss and traveled the world for 17 years and how I pay for things, come to Vagabond Buddha and grab the free ebook.
And also at the same time made me feel very good.
Getting attention again. It's kind of nice.
Oh, yeah. It was like on a whole different level that you just, and then I noticed it wasn't only that, it was even in conversing with a lot of the women. It was just totally different. And I wasn't used to that. I was born and raised here. I was born and raised in New York, right? So just a whole different culture. So a lot of times I thought, oh, these people can't really be this nice, this kind, but they were for the most part. And that's one of the most beautiful things about Filipino culture that I came to love was that just their interaction with it, now you've been there many times, you know how it is. They're just a different culture, for as much adversity as they face. I think a lot of Western society can learn something from that, which is they smile. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Yeah.
It's a totally different deal. Whereas sometimes in the States, you're like, you can't even get a good morning anymore,
Yeah.
Like, hello, did you hear me? I held that door for you. Did you say hello? Did you say thank you? I appreciate it, so.
Yeah, it's a very pleasant social interaction there in the Philippines. People are quite nice. So you finally met a woman online you're interested in. How did you decide, and when did you decide to go over?
I decided to go over after I met Marielle. I started talking to her the most, and then I was more so serious with her, and then I just basically decided that I would go over there and visit her for the first time, and which again, I've never been abroad, so it was all new to me. I wrote all this in the book. I mean, it literally was. I literally booked my flight before I had my passport. Wow. So I literally did that. And then when I got back to the office, I thought, when I was working at the time, I thought, well, I can expedite this. And it worked out. But her parents at the time thought I was crazy. But how I got to that point was just going through, trying to see who I was compatible with. I wasn't looking for, in my situation, I wasn't looking for just, somebody to lust after all, with all the obvious reasons why we go with women. But I was looking for somebody that I was compatible with, somebody I can conversate with, somebody I can talk to. And she crossed all those dots because she was educated. She was the oldest in her family, which meant a lot of responsibility, the ate. So her maturity superseded her years, and she looked like she had a baby face even at 32 when I met her. She looked very young. She still had braces on. So that was a lot. But when I actually started talking to her, it kind of changed the whole game of it,
Yeah. And so you met her when she was 32. How old were you at that time?
53.
53. And
yes.
And so you got your passport, you bought a ticket, and you went over to see her.
Yes. And the funny thing was, when we got to the hotel, I thought, I'm going to get a jump on her. I'm going to meet her downstairs in the lobby. I went downstairs. I'm sitting there looking at the front desk, and she comes sneaking up behind me. She was already there waiting for, she was already there. She seen me sit down and everything else. And her sister was filming the whole thing. So she came up behind me and scared me. But she was very smart. She was there before me. I thought I was going to get the jump on her, but it didn't work out that way. And then it was, very cute and kind too, which was her sister came with her, right? Because again, you're coming from abroad. They don't know who you are until you actually meet somebody. And that was the first time meeting them. And then we went out to dinner and stuff like that. And then later on, I met the whole family. They all kind of chaperoned me, which was nice, which again was so different than what I was used to. She was very conservative values, and I respected that a lot. I wasn't looking for what a lot of people do look up for there, or a percentage of people, let's say. You know, it wasn't one of these Angeles City type deals. I wasn't interested in that. I truly was interested in compatibility with somebody, having a relationship with somebody. I just didn't want to go through life, because I was married for so long, being alone.
Yeah, after 30 years, boy, a lot of silence in a room.
And that was the nice thing too, which is important to point out for her family, was that age difference, although it existed, of course, but one of the things that they respected, and what I thought was very nice, was the fact that they looked at it that I was married that long. I wasn't divorced. The stability in being married so long and the commitment to it. So that was a nice aspect of it, you know?
Yeah, that's quite a resume, especially these days. And so you ended up in the Philippines. How long did you stay on that first visit, and what happened next?
Just a few days, because she had to go back to work. But what happened next was we just had a beautiful time there. Now, again, this mind you, is after thousands of hours of speaking on the phone and FaceTime, right?
Yeah.
So, but when you do finally meet in person, yes, it is a little different, but you already know the person to some degree.
Yeah.
So we had a great time, and I felt like after a couple of days, I felt they were just very welcoming, and I felt comfortable. I can't explain it, you know?
Huh.
Now, that's the other thing too, coming from the States, you're thinking to yourself, well, you know, all sorts of negativity to some extent, or maybe other people have this negative forces, but I never really felt that. I felt very comfortable at first. And I was very inspired by it, because I had some friends that actually went to other countries and tried to get relationships. They weren't in my situation. They weren't married a long time. They just were looking for other relationships. And some of them were disastrous, like going to Europe, you know, to different parts of Europe, also South America, to, you know, Colombia and places like that. And those relationships and the investments that those guys made, they didn't turn out. Whereas after my first meeting, it was almost a relief, because I felt like at minimal, none of this was a failure. It was well worth my time and effort to come over there. And I was interested in carrying that forward. I really was, from the initial time that I had met her in person and met her family.
So when I met you, I think you were married at that time. So how long was it between when you met her and when I met you and Baguio was?
It was a few years. So she came here in 2018, got her, you know, work visa, citizenship. And then the year after, we decided to have a baby. We had a baby. Then when the baby was born, it was during COVID. And at that time too, while she was working, we both had COVID before the baby was born. But I said to myself during that time frame, I stood home with the baby and watched him for a while. And then I had a discussion with my wife stating that I didn't want to do that until he was 5 years old, let's say school ready. What I thought was, I started crunching some numbers and taking a look at my pension, my house, things that I had, and try to make a game plan of moving abroad. Now, we could have went to Mexico. We could have went to Costa Rica. You know, I looked at cities in Mexico too. That should be noted, is that when my first wife passed away, I was just going to sell everything and go. I didn't want to be here any longer. But so I had some knowledge in other places that I was interested in going. The mountains in Adelante in Mexico, one of them that's kind of an artsy town. Chapala Lake, that was another one. And then, of course, Costa Rica.
Sure.
So I looked at those places, but getting back to the Philippines, after we had the baby, I didn't want to be Mr. Mom at home full time. We decided to retire early because of COVID. And I threw the idea at her, as like, well, let's go back to the Philippines. Your family's there, English speaking. And I ran the numbers several times, and I thought, no, we can do this. We definitely can do this. And so we decided to do it, and we sold everything. And what's great about my wife, she's very organized. So we started selling everything in February. By that June, we were ready to leave. And then we went there. We started off in Baguio. But Baguio, as nice as it was for you, for us, it wasn't that great. We didn't have a great apartment. We're having a child and a baby carriage and all that, and taking grabs all over the place. But just commuting in the city was very difficult with the baby at the time. Even going to SM, the traffic, the streets and everything. The other thing was the travel aspect of it. It wasn't centralized. You had to go down the mountain towards La Union or something like that to be centralized. So we thought, her family was in Mindoro. We thought the closer we moved to Manila, we'd be central to the airport, and we would have access to the malls and things like that, more so than in Baguio. So although I like the weather in Baguio, and that's why we started there, was to kind of acclimate to the heat and blah, blah, blah. I was much happier once we got to the Metro Manila area.
But now you're in the US, aren't you?
Yes. Came back to the U.S.
Okay. So are you planning to live in the US or the Philippines?
Yes.
Or?
My wife likes the U.S. I like the U.S. also. For me personally, I can live part-time in the Philippines, but full-time, I don't see it. Especially with a young son, the education, the systems here, it's a lot easier here. It's difficult in the Philippines for a lot of different things. Put aside the beauty of the culture and everything. I mean, you're still in a developing nation. So both me and my wife decided that it'd be best to bring my son back here for preschool and stay here. And my wife works in banking. She works in finance. That's what she did when she worked in the Philippines before I married her. So she got a good job. I'm retired, of course. I write books and do other things. So we decided to come back, and I had a house here, and rented it. And we briefly thought about purchasing another home and continuing to rent our house, but we just decided to just come back to our house and do some light renovations. And I've owned the house for over 25 years. And so it just made more sense for us financially going into this stage of life of just having minimal debt, a little bit more money to enjoy ourselves,
Yeah,
that's key.
That's great. And how old is your kid now?
He's 4.5.
Wow, time flies.
Yeah, 4.5.
That's great.
Do you remember you helped me up the stairs with the baby carriage?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a memorable day because of that earthquake.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it was Chung's first earthquake too, so she was quite surprised. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
very nice woman. You tell her I said hello.
I will. She's with family right now. She well, that's a long story. I won't get into that, but she's having a great time right now with her family. So
Nice.
what advice do you have for people that are going through this transition, if any?
Well, my advice would be is first, you'd have to want to make some sort of change, right? Some people, they get caught up in, for whatever reasons, they can't, they're not comfortable in it. And I point all these things out in my book.
Yeah.
You have to want to make change and take the chance to do so if you choose to do so. Some people don't, they don't want to. But if you do it, my advice is life goes by very fast and you take the chance and live it now while you can. I don't know about you. I've experienced a lot of people in my life that have a lot of plans and all those things don't come to fruition. Like I said, I grew up in the Bronx. I grew up in the street environment. So I grew up in that. And I know what life can be like. Even losing my wife, she was there 1 minute, and my first wife, and gone the next. So there are no promises. You can make all the plans you want. Those things really don't work out. So getting back to my point is, if you want to do it, come up with a game plan. Of course, when you move anywhere in the country, do your due diligence and research it, whether that's if you're looking for a relationship, understanding the culture, having the resources to do so. Be honest with yourself. Don't be one of these guys that goes, it doesn't have to be the Philippines, it can be anywhere. Make sure you have enough resources to live comfortably within the way you want to live. I point this out in my book too, and you know this too, is that there's a lot of YouTube gurus out there about all parts of the world. I wouldn't necessarily put a lot of stock in that, especially in a place like the Philippines, because that is one location, like many others, you don't want to live without any money. You have to have money. So that would be key to do that. And of course, if you're looking for a relationship with a female, do your due diligence and understand the culture and what that consists of. Outside of that, the positives, oh my God, I would have never experienced this in my life if I didn't go and do it. And I can tell you that the Philippines is one of the most beautiful countries that once you get out of the cities, if you like the city, that's fine. You want to live in BGC or Makati, that's on you, Cebu. But once you get out of the cities, it's National Geographic stuff. It's just beautiful. Palawan, Boracay, I've been to all these places. 100 Islands, Pangasinan, just beautiful places. And so that much of that part of it I enjoyed. And then we had a chance to go to Vietnam, which was on my bucket list, which I loved it. I love that country.
Yeah.
Love Vietnam also.
John, tell us about your book and what you cover in that briefly, and then how did they get a copy of it?
The book is called Love Across Borders because after my last book about surviving grief, I wanted to really do something nice for my wife, tell our story, and also touch on a lot of expat stuff and how we lived. But you can get it on Amazon.com. And what I'm going to look at also is getting some copies for people in the Philippines to purchase through like a Cafe Espresso, a private little book thing where you can get some copies. Amazon.com. And I touched through everything, our meeting, what it was like, age gap differences, having children late in life, the expat cultures, what I experienced when I was out there, finances of how I did it, what you can look forward to doing in terms of, if you have the resources, places to travel, to do. And in my case, again, understanding that culture, especially if you're in a serious relationship or any relationship at all. It's always helpful to go to another country, really understand it, and know what the difference is like of living like a local person in any country and living like a Westerner. More often than not, a good rule of thumb is if you want to live like a Westerner, be prepared that your budget's going to exceed the normal standard. If you want to live like a foreigner, know exactly what that is. I mean, if you want to live like a province person and like a Filipino, know exactly what that is before you think you're going to be able to do it. Go to a country, experience what it is before you make any commitments to it. So those are a lot of things I touch on.
Yeah. Okay, the name of your book again?
Yeah, Love Across Borders.
And yes, the author's name is John
F. Lorne, L-O-R-N-E. Thank you for doing the forward for me, Dan. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And thanks for taking the time to come on the channel and tell your story. It's a unique story, and I really appreciate it.
Sounds good. See you next time, Dan. Good seeing you.
Take care, John.
Bye-bye.
All right. You can get John's book at Amazon. You can also get it in the first link in the notes below the YouTube video. And for my book about how to live overseas like this, scan this QR code right here. And if you'd like to watch videos from more expats or people that have gone overseas to find love, watch this playlist right here.